Now I've got all the base paints on the Ork Jet, and most of the I'm hoping that most of the visual interest is going to be coming from the oil work that I do, because right now it's pretty plain. No pun intended. Hey, just thought of that. That's pretty good, John. But it's fairly plain, Plain, and I wanted to do something to just give it. I mean, you've seen World War II vehicles, even modern jets. Pilots personalize them. I know when I was in the Army, they didn't want us to, but quite often we would get away with putting little personalizations on our vehicles. So it's a fairly common thing. But when I look at the box art, they've got several things. Like, you'll notice that several of them have these checker patterns that feature fairly prominently, or these jagged tooth patterns. There's also these patterns up on the nose. These two have it, that I think is quite interesting. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to start by trying to paint something kind of like this on the front of it. I think that would look kind of cool. Now, to paint those in, I'm doing something that I do every now and then just to see if it makes any difference to my eye. So far, not really. I try to apply some color theory. This is yellow. Other side of the color wheel, purple. But I don't want to paint those purple because the markings are supposed to be black. So what did I do? I got clever, and I mixed roughly, and I mean roughly, 2 parts or 3 parts this Amethyst Rain and 2 parts Doom Death Black. Now, the brand, even the color, is not important. What's important? Purple and black. Now, what I wanted to do is I wanted to have something that was pretty much going to look black, but would maybe have just a hint of purplish to it. And just see, okay, does applying color theory in cases like this really matter? I mean, I know I'm not discounting color theory, but sometimes I hear creators, they really dive into the, a color theory. I chose this color, and I look at it and I go, I just don't see it. So what I want to see is this, that I truly don't see it? Is it sort of the Emperor's New Clothing kind of thing? Or is it something that is better viewed in person? Does it matter? So anyway, this is just an experiment. If you were doing this and you were wanting to just be faithful to the Lord, just go with black. Forget everything I just said. It's stupid anyway. Stupid John. Now for this, I got a new brush, and I'm looking forward to using it. This is a Rosemary & Co. Pure Sable. This is not the Kolinsky Sable. This is the one that I can order in the U.S. And I ordered it directly from the UK. If you're in the US and you order directly from the UK, the shipping rate you're going to pay is not going to be much more, if any more, than what you would pay for good brushes shipped from the US. So I would say if you're looking at ordering from them, don't hesitate just because they're in the UK. I ordered it, and I got a notice within 2 hours that it was prepared for shipping. And I got it from the UK. I ordered it last Thursday, and I ordered it from the UK, and it showed up yesterday, Wednesday, so less than a week. And most of that time was spent in U.S. Customs, so I was real happy with that. But anyway, it's a Series 88. It's a liner brush, very long, thin brush. The bristles are longer than your normal round brushes, but they're quite a bit thinner, but a very sharp point. What these liner brushes are designed for, proper artists, the Bob Ross kind of artists, Mark Carter kind of artists, is they use these quite often for things that would require writing, or things that would require Very fine script kind of lines. Look at that, there's a little hair hanging off of there. Little script kind of things. So things that require very fine lines where you're wanting it to flow almost like a pen. That's the theory. Now, I've used lots of liner brushes, but I always use cheap liner brushes. I've never used a good liner brush. So I just wanted to see how this worked in comparison. So I got that, and because it's the pure sable, they're way cheaper than. I mean, remember it's Rosemary & Co. who makes Artis Opus, and you can get brushes from Rosemary & Co. that are the same kind of brushes you get from Artis Opus for way, way cheaper. Nothing against Artis Opus, but this is why I buy Hyundais or not Hyundais, Hondas, and not Acuras. Acura's made by Honda. Yeah, it may have the leather heated seats and other little things like that, but I'm not a leather heated seat kind of guy. A couple of years after I get a car, the seat just smells like a fart, to be honest. So probably too much information, right? But anyway, Rosemary & Co. brushes are the best I've ever used, and they are the most affordable. So I highly recommend them. But anyway, Series 88 liner brush. All right, now I've thinned the paint down. It's hard to even say how much. I think it was maybe 1.5 parts water, 1 part paint. You can see, I'll do the thumb thing. You can see the line that it gets there. It's fairly opaque, but still quite thin. And all I want to do is I'm going to be very careful. In this process, I would rather have too little paint on the brush than too much, because I don't want to overdo it. And all I'm going to do is I'm going to pick, that's roughly my starting point, and I'm going to line the model with how I'm going to pull my hand back. I'm just going to start about right here. All right, model, you got to sit still. We're in this together, bud. You got to cooperate, man. So, yeah, I talk to my models all the time. But I'm just going to go and pull it back like that. There. That was dramatic, wasn't it? And I can't tell if adding purple in that made any difference. I'm either going to end up with something that looks like it's got black flames on the front, or somebody's going to go, "Why did you paint that purple?" I don't think it's going to be as artistically impressive as I thought. But I'm going to start again, and I'm going to try and place my brush right about in the middle, and I'm going to just pull it back again. And I'm going to go to where I want one edge to be, and then I'm going to come here, and I'm going to do it again, and there's the other edge. Now, what I can do is fill that part in here, just like this. And if the paint is patchy here, I'm okay with that, because remember, these are orcs. I'm keeping in mind the theory of how I'm painting this. And if the paint is thin and is not completely opaque and a little splotchy, I'm okay. The main thing I want to do is paint over those lines so that they don't look like the orc did any planning. Now, what's left is that little stem up there, so I just need to kind of incorporate that in a little better, like that, and like that. As always, when paint goes on wet, it's glossy, and you can't always see exactly what it looks like. So I'm not going to adjust that any further. I'm going to let that one sit, and I'm going to go on and do the next one. Now, the box art shows them roughly, like one here, and one here, and one here. So there's like one for each of these metal spikes, and then one between them. What I'm going to do is I'm going to paint the second one over here in roughly the same space. And then I'm going to use the distance between the two to kind of pick where I want that one to be. I mean, it's going to be roughly centered around this, but this little thingy here is going to make painting that slightly more difficult. Let me unload my brush some. Almost forgot to do that. And the other thing I'm having to be careful of here is because of the way I've painted this yellow on, it's going to be more difficult to fix mistakes in terms of touching up the edges. Now, it's not going to be impossible. I'll just simply stipple on some yellow around the mistake to fix it. But I just want to be careful to try and not make too many mistakes. Again, I don't want it to be perfect. These are orcs. Although, I mean, I'm looking at that first one kind of out of the corner of my eye now, and I'm going, that one might be a little too good for orcs. But I'll live with it. Now, of course, you can always go back after the fact and add in some yellow to chip it and, you know, do some things to make it look less than perfect. Also, I gotta say, as far as this brush goes, I'm really loving it. Now, this is, I want to say, a $4 or $5 brush, if I remember right. It might have been $6. Very affordable, but I think the difference between this and the cheap liner brushes that I have always used, the liner brushes that I've used up until now, generally, with one exception, have been the very cheap, buy 100 of them off of Amazon for $20 kind of things. See, now I've thickened that up too much. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to pull it up higher, right there, reestablish the point, and bam, there we go. Happy accident. But let me clean this brush real quick, because I'm going to ramble about brushes. Obviously, I'm in a rambling mood this morning. This is before I go to work, so I'm thankful for my job. My job is certainly not a bad job, but sometimes looking towards the day of resetting passwords for people just gets a little discouraging, but it's got to be done. Anyway, this is the synthetic brush that I normally use. Well, okay, it's not the synthetic brush I use. Hang on. I've got lots of those cheap brushes. This is, I don't know how many this is, but I got these because, and you'll see these playing prominently when I do the video on oils for this, because I'm going to use cheap synthetic brushes for that. But these are, I mean, these are throwaway. If the tip gets hooked, if it starts looking bad, I think I figured out the cost on these particular ones was 17 cents per. I've still got dozens, and over the last 5 years, I've thrown away 6 or 7 of them. So they're going to be with me for a long time. They're very useful, but the paint, what I noticed, the difference between the two, I mean, the tips are, you know, very similar. All of that. The paint flows off of this natural hairbrush so much better. Normally, I have to really pay attention to go, okay, am I noticing a difference between natural and synthetic? And the longer I do this and the more comfortable I am with brush painting, the more I do notice the difference. But I immediately noticed the difference on this. So this was good. Now, it doesn't mean I'm going to quit using these, because they certainly have their application. But for something like this, I'm really happy with this natural hairbrush. Now, this area here, and you see the way I got it, even though I started the base kind of halfway between the two, you notice that this is now slightly off center. So what I want to do, again, I don't want to be perfect, but at the same time, it's hard. It's hard. The human mind wants there to be symmetry, wants there to be evenness. At least my mind does. So I'm gonna try and make it even without making it even, if that makes any sense. But I'm just going to pull the line. I need a little more paint than that. I'm going to pull the line. I'm going to tilt it. I think I'm going to tilt it this way. And I'm going to bring it back. And then I'm going to stop right there so I don't get up on that silver. Here I'm going to have to change the angle just a bit. And I'm going to come in from the other direction. Come on, model. Cooperate with me here. Don't you be sliding around. Models have their own personality. They really do. That's not just crazy talking. Now let me bring that tip there, and then I'm going to bring it around and see if I can incorporate that splodge there that I got. I'll do that. There we go. All right. Now I've just got to do this all the rest of the way around the nose. But you see how I'm doing this. It's going to take a little while, but really not for the results. I don't think it'll be an egregious amount of time. You can tell I looked at my $64 word calendar for the day. But just paint that in like that. Now, as with so many things, and you know, you've heard me say it, once I get the camera off, I'll get this 2 inches from my face and I'll make corrections, because right now you're probably looking at it on camera and going, wow, John, that's not real good. I really can't see what I'm doing. I mean, I can see, but I can't see the quality of it. So I'm relying on muscle memory and hoping that that works. But that'll get it started, and then I can go in and fill it around the rest. All right, I'm finished with that. I decided not to carry it around onto that armor plate. That's this additional armor plate on the bottom here, mainly because I just got bored doing it, and I thought, well, that's a logical place to stop. But I'm happy with that. It's a little patchy in some areas, which is okay. It's not perfect, which is okay. And if I had painted the background of this completely opaque, solid yellow, it would be easy to go in and fix those lines, because you just go in and you just line in some of the color, and you can make the tips very sharp by just cutting them off at edges, just cutting into it with the paint. But for my purposes, I'll live with that. I mean, I think, you know, that's where they would go and get one of the orks that was a little more artistic. And, you know, then like I mentioned in that video on YouTube, and I don't think nobody mentioned this. I thought it was funny. It made me laugh. But that he watched on, you know, OBS, the Ork Broadcasting Service, he watched Bob Ross. And I thought that was funny. I'm sorry. It was funny. But maybe he watched Bob Ross, and he was a little more artistic, so I'm okay with that. Now the box art shows that they've got him in a few other places, like, you know, just little bits, like some back from here and some back from here. I think I'm just going to leave it like that. I'm done with painting that. I don't feel like, hey, I need to go paint more of these. But two, I think it would be, again, if I'm thinking orcs, they're going to put it up front because flames make it look like it's going faster. So you put it up front, you know. There's going to be other decorations. Now the next thing I want to paint, and this is going to be a test of patience. I may paint it on the bottom first to see if I can even do it. But this faction that I'm painting uses this symbol of this angry moon guy here like that. I want to try and paint some of those on, at least on one on the wing, maybe one up on the tail. I'm not even going to attempt, I won't have the patience to do the one that has the saw blade around it. I'm just going to do something like that. I think I can pull that off. We will see. Like I said, I'll probably flip it over and paint it on the bottom so that if I munge it up, it won't really matter. And you can see they give you a little decal for some tiny little flames like that and a few checkers. I'm like, where are you going to use that? Um, but I'll get that'll be the next thing I do. It'll probably be, this is Thursday morning, probably be Friday morning because I'm fixing to have to head off to work. So anyway, you don't care about that because it'll just be a fade. Anyway, that'll be the next thing I attempt to do. All right, I looked at the decal sheet to try and get that moon shape right. I started to try and freehand it, but then I thought, you know what? I know me better than that. I do not need to try and freehand it. I will pencil it. Now what I'm going to do now is I'm going to paint it in, but I'm going to stay inside the line because my plan is to get it mostly filled in, roughly, stipple it, paint it, whatever it takes to just get most of the shape filled with paint. And then I'm going to go back off camera and get it right up to my face and complete those lines like that. It occurs to me now that what I should have done is I should have painted a brighter yellow, kind of like they had put down painted on a special patch of yellow paint to put this over, because if I would have done that, then I would have had a nice solid base coat that if I made mistakes, I could use that yellow to cover it up. So that's why I did this on the underside. This is an experiment. If it fails, then at least I can paint it over with yellow like it was intended to be done that way, and put the decal on. Now, one thing you can do with decals, if you're not comfortable with trying to paint on markings, then I've done this a lot with aircraft. Put on a decal and then just add paint over it. You don't even have to fully paint it in unless you're just trying to completely shift the color. But sometimes it's easier to paint over something that's already there. And then, because that way it can look like, it's chipped, or like sometimes if a decal was pure white and I wanted it to be a little more dingy looking, I would just go in and stipple on some gray. You don't even have to put it in all over the area, but just enough that it suggests that the thing has gotten kind of dingy. So I'm still using this black purple mixture that I came up with earlier. Although this is a completely different day and a completely different batch, and so it's not exactly the same, but I figure these are Orks, that's okay. The other thing I wasn't real worried about doing is trying to make it be aligned straight. I figure, again, it's Orks. To stick with the lore, why worry about that? So let me get off camera, get this painted in real close, and then I'll go in with the yellow and put in the eyes and the teeth. All right, I got the one painted in up top too. You can see it's still drying a little bit. And I made this one a little bigger just to try and make it easier on myself. Also off camera, had to do this off camera. I painted in their names, Orville and Timmy. I put Timmy 4 because, as I referred to, I think in the previous Patreon video, this is actually a reference to a show called Dinosaurs. I thought that what the line was time for a new Timmy, but I went back and rewatched some clips on YouTube of the scenes from that show, Dinosaurs, and he actually says, looks like we're going to need a new Timmy. So it still works, but to kind of riff on that, I made this guy Timmy 4. That, I mean, I can just picture it. The snotling in the back gets shot out, and they go back and find another snotling, throw him in the back, and he says, "Your name is Timmy." I remember when I was in the Army, whenever we got new guys in the unit, their name was always New Guy. Until the next new guy came along, or unless they really proved themselves in some way, their name was always, New Guy. So, I can get that. And then if guys had the same names, that'd be, I mean, you know, that'd be Timmy 1 and Timmy 2. I mean, that's just, in an odd way, the orcs are a military. I mean, they're going to operate that way. Again, if I'm thinking real world. But anyway, I painted those with this. I am loving this, this liner brush. If you didn't catch it earlier, this is a size 0 from Rosemary & Co. Series 88 liner brush. And man, the paint flows off of this so nice. And the beautiful thing is you can be painting and getting a very fine line, and then the more pressure you apply, the thicker the line gets. It's very touch sensitive. And because of its long size, it holds a lot of paint. I'd been trying the Dave Perryman method of using the very short brushes for very fine painting, and it works really well, but you have to keep going back to the palette. This one holds a ton of paint, but it just lets it flow out really smooth. So I have really liked using these this liner brush. So I'm happy with that. I'm going to give this a little more time to dry before I start working with the yellow. I figure as long as I've got this color in my palette, I want to tackle the checkerboards on the front. I want to have them going along the leading edge, and then around on the bottom there's this hard panel line right there. So I'm going to confine it to that area. That'll be my boundary on the bottom, which will make it easy. Whoops, sorry about bumping the camera. And then up top, it's just going to be along that line right there. Now I'm just going to eyeball that. We'll see how that goes. And paint these in. I got a feeling, I think what I'm going to have to do is I'm going to have to show painting part of it and my methodology for it, and then just do the whole rest of it off camera. So, but let me get situated so I can film this and try and do it and talk through it. And what I'm going to do to start, whoops, let me get this aligned with my hand so that I can, I keep bumping the camera, I apologize. All right, what I'm going to do is I'm going to use this row of rivets as kind of my guide, and I'm going to go all the way down to this rivet here. I'm going to start at this line here, this line here. If you weren't comfortable doing this, or if you were on a model that didn't have reference points, just put down some tape. You're not going to use the tape as a mask. You're going to use the tape as a guide. That's the way I would recommend doing it. But because I've got these rivets here, and because, again, I love this excuse of, well, they're orcs. What I'm going to do is I'm going to paint just aft of, or just forward of the rivet line. And this is hard to do on camera because mechanically it's not a real good position, but I'll make do because I care. But I'm going to paint in for this pattern this first line here. Now I could, I suppose, just go in and paint the whole thing black and then paint the yellow squares in, but I think it would be a little counterproductive to try and paint that in. Now, if you're wondering why I didn't put down a white base coat, I noticed that the examples I've seen of this clan, the orc groups, the orc tribes are called clans. I noticed that these guys paint their checkerboards yellow and black. So I'm just going to leave the yellow in there. Now I'll go back in and punch up the yellow areas, but I want to get the black in there first and then use the yellow as kind of a cleanup layer. I've got that. Now let me just bring this, and I'm going to just try and do it parallel to that. So let me hold my hand there, get the brush aligned, slide it down. There, that's close. All right, now let me get it flipped over without knocking the camera. Hang on. Now here the line is pretty much set for me. I've just got to bring this down to that bolt. Unfortunately, those bolts a line. Now for what the hard part is going to be. Well, there's not going to be too many easy parts of trying to do this. Hang on, let me try and get this back in focus. The hard part is I want to get 3 rows in there. So I have to paint 3 rows along the leading edge. Now I'll go ahead and tell you, I'm going to do that off camera. I may get 1 or 2 in on camera, but what I'm going to do to try and help me is I'm going to divide up the space between the rivets. I'm going to use those rivets, and I'm going to try and paint parallel lines on each of the rivets. Now here, where there's no rivets, I'm just going to have to eyeball it and hope it comes out fairly close. But what I'll do is just paint these like that. Now, if you're thinking this is a whole lot of trouble to go to, you're right. But believe it or not, well, y'all know me, you probably believe it. Not the whole reason, but a huge reason that I decided to do this project was I wanted to paint these checkers. I've painted them in small patterns before. Painted them on the shoulder of an Imperial Knight. They turned out okay. But I wanted to try and put this on here. Now it looks like I've gotten away from being aligned with the rivets. So I'll just try and keep it consistent with itself from this point on. I also noticed that I've gone off kilter with being parallel to this end point, so I'm going to have to make some adjustments there, but that's okay. Now, just sorry about going silent there. Well, I do that every now and then, so y'all are used to it. This is taking an incredible amount of concentration. And because it's still early in the morning there, I'll fudge it a bit. Just fudge that line. I can go back and clean it up. All right, now I'm going to take those lines and carry them around all the way to the other side. So let me go off camera because I don't have to pull this up in front of my face. Let me go off camera to do that. Now, I apologize for the really weird angle, but in order to make this work, I've got to do it at this angle so I can see it and film it. But I figured what worked better than trying to paint a straight line all the way down was to just go through and do the checker patterns individually. So I'll paint this one like that. Keeping in mind, again, these are orcs painting this. It's not going to be perfect. And then I go and I paint this one here like this on the lower side. And this way, instead of having to try and paint one long straight line, which would probably get a bit wobbly because of just the weird angle of having to try and paint that. If I paint them individually like this, then, and I hope this is in focus, I am not able to watch the camera at all while I do this. Let me make that a little higher right there and bring it over. I saw that blob of paint coming off of there, and so I had to back off real quick so it didn't run. But I'll just continue down the wing this way, and that way it will generally stay consistent, but each adjacent piece will be consistent more or less with the one on either side of it, thus the word adjacent, John. And while it won't be perfect when viewed in whole, I think it will be in universe. I'm liking this whole narrative approach to painting because the fact that I'm doing orcs means any mistake I can make, I can just go, oh, well, I was just trying to be like an orc. So it's kind of convenient. I like that. This is actually going faster than I thought it would, and it's actually looking better than I thought it would. I thought I was going to hash this up bad. In fact, I really shouldn't say I thought I was going to hash it up, because a hash is usually pretty good. You know, corned beef hash, or making some hash browns or something like that. I love hash browns at breakfast. Anyway, all right, I'm going to get off camera, and I'm just going to keep going all the way down this wing, and then I'll do the other wing. I thought about doing the leading edges of the tail, the vertical and horizontal stabilizers, but after seeing how long this is going to take, ain't no way. I'll do it on the leading edges of the wings and call it done. So let me get this done. Okay, I've got those colors laid in. I'm okay with that. It's not perfect. If I was trying to make it perfect, I would probably be a little upset with it. Of course, I haven't done the second step, which allows you to kind of, if you want to neaten things up. And that didn't take as long as I thought. Total time that I've been working on this is maybe half an hour. Once I realized that I didn't need to paint the horizontal lines straight down, that I could just do a block and then a block and then a block and just keep building on it, it actually worked out really well. So let me get some yellow in my palette and go in and add some yellow details on a few things. Now for painting this yellow, I've switched to this yellow flame color from Two Thin Coats. The reason I did that, and I could have used a Citadel, but this one was just handy. I wanted something that was a little punchier and brighter than the yellows I've been using, and I wanted to thin it less and make it a little more saturated. Like I painted the rim around Timmy here with this yellow, because what I wanted to do is I started being concerned it wasn't reading yellow enough. So I thought if I punched up a few places with yellow, like you can see here, I did it on this aileron over here. I'm probably going to do a few other patches. Did these spoilers here. Did this thing up here. But by using that punchier yellow, it just, I think it just helps everything read as yellow a little better. That it's not quite so washed out as I was concerned that it was becoming. But what I'm going to do now is, let me get a piece of paper towel here. I've got this yellow flame in my brush. Now what I'm going to have to do, let me adjust my position here and try and get this up so that, one, it's where the camera can see it. Let me look at my little picture here. All right, so roughly parallel to the nose. Oh, sorry about hitting the camera. That's just going to happen right now. I want to go in and just create his eye. It's kind of a hard balance to get, because I'm trying to, I don't want to overload the paintbrush. Dang it, sorry. I don't want to overload the paintbrush, but I don't want to have so little that I'm not getting anything on there. Am I even getting close with this? Yeah, I guess it's reasonably close. I keep looking over at the decal, and part of the problem is trying to film this and see it. It's actually quite blurry right now because I can't get my optivisor in close enough. I'm probably going to have to go back with my black purple and do some cleanup, because this doesn't look, it's got kind of an angry look to him, and I don't know that that's going to dry looking angry. But and I'm going to have to do a second coat of that. This is just kind of roughing it in to see how it's going to look. Now let me try and get the tooth in. Now the tooth, the back one rounded at the bottom and points up. So let me do a circle right here. like that. Just hit the light. Reminds me of the Metallica song, Hit the Lights. Anyway, but not a lot of y'all knew that I was a Metallica fan. I tell people that and they're like, what? Yeah. Yeah, 80s John thought he was a rocker. Now the front one has the circle at the top. So let me paint a little circle there. And that. Like that. That didn't come out real well. I'll have to go back in and correct that. And then the tooth in the middle is just kind of a triangle. Boy, that's not much of a triangle there, is it? Okay, let me fill this in. Fill this in a little more. Sorry about going silent and my hand shaking and all of this other stuff. Let me just do it that way. All right, let me dry this with a hairdryer. All right, now with the hairdryer having helped me dry that, what I want to do is go back in and just clean up some of these edges to be a little sharper. My thinking here is, because this is their symbol, the Orks would be a little more careful about painting it. That's my thinking, and I'm sticking to it. There. I can live with that. That's the decal. That's my version. I'll live with it. All right, let me clean off my brush. Now I'll do that on the underside too, to the markings under there, but all I'm going to do now, and I'm not going to torture you by subjecting you to me doing this entirely, but as I close for this video, I'm just going to say I'm going to go in and just kind of stipple in some color here and make little spot corrections where needed, but just put in some color there to make the yellow a bit punchier through here, which I think is really going to help the look of it. I think it's going to make this look pretty decent, I hope. Again, I am really, really liking this this liner brush. This has I could have done it with another brush, certainly, but I think the fact that this has such a fine point, the paint flows from it so nicely, but it holds a reasonable amount of paint. If I'd have been using that little pointed brush, the little Series 93, I don't think I'd have been able to do an entire square without going back to the palette. And here I'm able to rough in 3 of them, just 3 of them so far. And the paint just flows off of it so nicely. I know I'm doing it rough, but that's intentional. But yeah, I'm liking that. I'm liking that. So anyway, I'm going to wrap up the video. I'd hoped to do some other stuff, but this one has just gone long enough that I think, all right, I'll save that for another video. So I've got a subject to do. My plan is in the next Patreon video to cover painting the clear parts and working on the jet exhausts and painting the armaments, just the final details, because I've decided the final YouTube video is just going to be the oil work. So I'll be able to shoot those concurrently because I can be doing a lot of the additional detail work in conjunction with or apart from the oils, like the armaments. I won't ever even show those until the very end when I just put them on. But I had thought about doing the armaments as a YouTube video, but I've just started changing my thinking on YouTube. I'm going to continue doing it, of course. I enjoy doing it. But, I'm thinking, you guys here on Patreon, you're keeping the lights on, so to speak. You're the ones who say, I like what you do, to the point that I'll help fund it. And so I'm thinking that's where my focus needs to be in a lot of cases. Because it's not a lot of response from YouTube. I'm okay with that. To Patreon. But the guys that are here, especially if you're watching at this point, I really appreciate you. So I'm going to be doing, I'm going to be making decisions about videos that are more about Patreon than necessarily about YouTube. But anyway, let me finish. You don't care about all that. Don't matter. You just want to see somebody painting, right? That's what I like watching. But I'm going to go in and finish this and finish the moon thing on the underside. And we'll see where this goes next. So, as always, thank you for being a patron. Thank you for your support, your encouragement, your friendship. And I hope you're working on a project where you're enjoying it and you're having fun. That's the main thing. You know what I say. If you're not having fun, you're doing it wrong. So, happy day to you, friends. Bye-bye.